I've played all the Resident Evil remakes to choose the best one and understand why this game is so terrifying with its atmosphere. I remember playing Resident Evil 4 and 5 a long time ago and having to pause the game quite often out of fear. We'll see if that changes in the remakes. Meanwhile, tell me your favorite Resident Evil game and why it's your favorite in the comments. I'll start with Resident Evil 2 Remake, the game that essentially set the bar for all remakes. I think almost everyone knows the plot, but I'll still go over it. You play as Leon Kennedy, a rookie cop who arrives in Raccoon City on his first day on the job. And as often happens, the city has already turned into hell. Zombies, panic, no communication, no help. At a gas station, Leon meets Claire Redfield, who is looking for her brother Chris, and their escape begins into a city that is essentially already dead. The game sets the tone right away. There's not a moment of peace. Everything is crumbling, cars are exploding, and zombies are literally falling on you from every street. Soon, Claire and Leon are forced to split up, and we find ourselves in the Raccoon City Police Department, and that's where the fun begins. The building is one of the best in the series. It seems safe, but at the same time, it's oppressive. Dark corridors, dripping water, a distant thud. You walk in for the first time and feel like you're here for a long time. Everything in Resident Evil 2 Remake builds anxiety. Even when nothing seems to be happening, you're still on edge. At first, everything seems simple. Explore the area, find keys, solve a few puzzles. But every door, every turn is a risk. Ammo is scarce, your inventory is small, and the enemies are absurdly resilient. And honestly, this is what brings back that feeling of survival that's rarely found in modern games. Killed a zombie? Check if he's really down. Most likely not. And then you meet the Licker for the first time, an eyeless, tattered monster crawling across the ceiling. It's not a jump scare, it's a moment when you genuinely hold your breath and move millimeter by millimeter to avoid making a sound. The game forces you to respect your enemies, not just shoot at them. But the real shock comes when Mr. X appears. A huge man in a cloak and hat who simply follows you. No unnecessary scenes, no introduction, you just open the door, and he's already there. He doesn't run, doesn't scream, just walks. And the sound of his footsteps becomes the scariest sound in the game. At some point, you even start to hate him. Not because he's difficult, but because you can't even kill him. Just as you can't relax for a second, every step he takes makes you tense, and this atmosphere of tension doesn't disappear until Mr. X himself disappears. Towards the end, when you find yourself in the Umbrella Lab, it becomes clear that all this horror isn't just a test tube virus, but the result of human greed. Birkin, Ada Wong, mutants, explosions, everything gradually builds to a finale that perfectly wraps up the story. And if you've completed both campaigns as Leon and Claire, you truly feel a sense of accomplishment. Resident Evil 2 Remake's gameplay balances the perfect pace. There's no unnecessary action, but there's also no boredom. You're constantly moving, solving puzzles, conserving ammo, choosing who to kill and who to avoid. The game rewards attentiveness. You can find new passages, shortcuts, and safe codes. Everything is designed to encourage exploration. The most interesting thing is that Resident Evil 2 Remake manages to please both fans of the original and newcomers. Veteran players have gained respect for the source material. All the key moments are preserved. Even the musical motifs are recognizable. New players, however, are treated to a modern, tight, dynamic horror experience where everything works intuitively. There are no fixed cameras, everything is third person, yet the atmosphere of the original is not lost. Even small details like how Leon reacts to injuries add depth. He limps, clutches his side, and breathes heavily. All of this brings the game to life. You truly feel the character's pain, not just watch from the sidelines. Resident Evil 2 Remake isn't just a remake. It's an example of how to treat a classic. Not cut it, not simplify it, but reimagine it with love. Capcom showed that you can take a 90 seconds game, preserve its spirit, and still make everything modern. And when the game ends, you don't immediately want to play the next one, you just want to sit in silence and digest it. This remake isn't just beautiful, it's well crafted. Every detail is perfectly placed. The atmosphere, the sound, the lighting, even the rhythm, everything is balanced. And yes, this is a truly terrifying game without cheap jump scares. so it's no wonder many consider it a benchmark. Resident Evil 3, however, is a bit more complicated. The game turned out to be, let's say, controversial due to its short length and the locations cut from the original. We play as Jill Valentine, one of the heroines of the first game, and she finds Raccoon City in a state of complete collapse. This isn't just a disaster, it's an apocalypse. People are fleeing, there's fire, screams, chaos. The game literally begins with a flight. And immediately Nemesis, who will terrorize us throughout the game. A creature as huge, terrifying, and immortal as Mr. X, who screams, "Stars!" and destroys everything in his path. The plot is divided into several key sections. Jill searches for a way out of the city, trying to survive, and simultaneously learns more about Umbrella's plans, and culminates in a final battle with Nemesis himself, who mutates after sustaining numerous injuries. The scene is epic and demonstrates that Capcom retained the spirit of the original but added more spectacle and cinematography. Carlos accompanies Jill on several missions, assisting with firefights and occasionally rescuing her from trouble, which adds dynamism and breaks the protagonist's loneliness. The story's ending is standard for the series. Jill and Carlos reach the exit from the city, escape, and leave chaos in their wake. However, the ending feels slightly more linear than Resident Evil 2, as Resident Evil 3 significantly cut back on side missions and additional scenes. The main problem with Resident Evil 3 Remake is its length. The game is short, easily completed in 5 to 6 hours. The Park Cemetery, newspaper office building, factory, gas station, and the fan-favorite chapel were cut from the game. In their place, the subway and the much-loved sewers were added. There are almost no puzzles. Everything has become more linear. At the same time, there's more action, with the addition of rolls, dodges, and a counterattack system. On the one hand, this makes the game more dynamic, but on the other, it kills the sense of survival. Nemesis is completely useless in this game. The villain is almost entirely scripted, and repeat playthroughs become quite predictable, as we already know exactly where and when our comrade will show up. The window where he can act even slightly unpredictably is incredibly short and ends well before the game's midpoint. Unfortunately, Nemesis, oddly enough, has far less room to maneuver on the city streets than Mr. X in the RPD station. There are many places he simply can't reach. Overall, the game is uniquely good. Even despite its flaws, it's enjoyable to play, doesn't strain, is well entertaining, doesn't let you get bored, and most importantly, it's quite replayable. And replaying it several times is completely routine, and that's a huge plus. But its flaws clearly outweigh all its positives. It's a matter of personal preference. For some, these flaws will be insignificant and they'll happily play through the game more than once, while for others, the listed advantages won't seem so significant, and the flaws will significantly outweigh them. Now we move on to Resident Evil 4 Remake. Here, Capcom decided, okay, let's do it on a grand scale. And the result is perhaps one of the coolest returns to a classic. The story begins several years after the events in Raccoon City. Leon is now a Secret Service agent, and he's sent to rescue the president's daughter, Ashley Graham. The locations are incredibly diverse. The village, the castle, the laboratory, everything is lovingly crafted, and yes, the locals are no longer just zombies, but carriers of the Las Plagas parasite. They talk, act in concert, and attack in groups. The opening scenes in the village are absolute legend. You're locked in a house, running low on ammo, a crowd is climbing through the window, and a guy with a chainsaw is approaching from the distance. It's arguably one of the best moments in the entire series. I still remember how terrifying and simultaneously pathetic it looked back in 2005. The story unfolds dynamically. You find Ashley, save her, lose her, save her again, and meet Louis, the most charismatic character in the entire series, who occasionally offers weapons, advice, or simply adds a bit of humor to break the tension. Ada Wong appears, along with villains, cultists, labs, giant mutants, the full Resident Evil experience. And yes, there's much more action here than in Resident Evil 2, but everything is balanced. Throughout the story, Leon encounters various locations, a castle, dungeons, laboratories. Each new level brings new enemy types, new puzzles, and new mini-bosses. The castle's especially cinematic. The music, lighting, and environments create an atmosphere of surprise. You never know what's around the corner. At the same time, horror elements are still present. Unexpected monsters, traps, and dark corridors maintain constant tension. The game culminates in the final laboratory with the mutated Saddler. The boss comes to life and creates epic moments. The final battle requires you to use everything you've collected: weapons, traps, and reflexes. The game leaves a sense of accomplishment, but also maintains momentum and excitement until the very end. The gameplay is a separate topic. Capcom reworked the combat, made the knife useful, added parrying, and improved enemy AI. Everything feels smooth, dynamic, and enjoyable. This isn't just a remake, it's a full-fledged modern shooter with horror elements. Visually, it's gorgeous. The European atmosphere, ancient villages, dank dungeons, fire and rain, everything looks alive. And the music and sound design only enhance the effect, especially in the castle, where every sacred chant makes you nervously reload. Overall, Resident Evil 4 Remake is a blend of action, adventure, and horror. It differs from RE2 and RE3 in that there's less fear and suspense, but more variety in locations, enemies, and mechanics. The plot keeps you engaged. Saving Ashley, uncovering Las Plagas' plans, meeting key characters, all of this makes the story rich, while still keeping the game as alive as possible. So, having played all three remakes, I can sum it up. Resident Evil 2 is certainly a benchmark for atmosphere. It's filled with fear, tension, Mr. X, and zombies that really send shivers down your spine. Resident Evil 3 is a fast-paced, stylish, and short escape game with a nemesis who looks cool but is scripted. But honestly, the best part for me was Resident Evil 4 Remake. Why? It perfectly combines story, gameplay, and excitement. Every location is interesting, varied, and alive. Leon behaves naturally, and Ashley and Lewis add interaction that prevents the game from becoming simply a crowd shooting experience. The combat mechanics, the rolls, the aiming, the knife as a survival tool, everything is designed in such a way that the game feels modern while still retaining the spirit of the original. Resident Evil 4's plot grips you from the very first minute and keeps you interested until the very end. Saving Ashley, meeting Ada, encountering strange village cults, the final battle with Saddler, everything is delivered dynamically, with the right dose of tension, action, and unexpected moments. And honestly, it's this balance that makes it the most impressive of the three remakes for me. Sure, Resident Evil 2 is scarier and Resident Evil 3 is faster paced, but Resident Evil 4 brings it all together: the action, the story, the characters, and the variety of locations, without ever getting boring. When you leave the game, you're left with a feeling of completion and enjoyment, which is rare with remakes. So, if I had to choose my favorite game, Resident Evil 4 Remake is the clear winner. Capcom has crafted a near-perfect remake. Respect for the original, modern mechanics, and a spectacular storyline that keeps you on your toes from start to finish. Now I'm curious, what do you think? Do you agree that RE4 is the best, or does RE2 still reign supreme? Let us know in the comments, it'll be interesting to discuss.